What's going on, guys? Welcome to my channel, Stay at Home Dad Poker. This is my first video, so this introduction is going to be a little bit long because I kind of want to give you guys a sense of what kind of prompted me to start this channel and give you an idea as to kind of what I'm going to be, what kind of content I'm going to be putting out here in the future. So thank you for sticking with me, and I hope you enjoy the ride. So before we get to a couple of hands for my very first session, the reason I started this channel is for a couple of things. I had aspirations when I was younger to play poker as a career. This was around 2008, and then life kind of happened, and I recently found myself in a situation where I am a stay-at-home parent and first-time dad, and I've been given another opportunity to kind of get into poker, and I want to bring you guys along for the journey. So sit back, relax, enjoy the content while you watch me kind of dive into the ups and downs of this juggling act that I'm going to be performing, and hopefully, it goes well. And yeah, so thanks again for tuning in, and with that being said, let's go ahead and jump into some hands.
All right, let's get into it. We are at Poker House Austin playing 1, 2, 5 match the stack. Everybody is in for around $500. It's still pretty early on in the session. Folds around to the cutoff, who opens for 15. The button comes along and just flat calls, and we look down at King 3 suited. We decide to flat call. The third blind comes along as well, so we go to a flop 4 ways of 3, 6, 5, 2 spades. Action checks around to the button, who decides to fire out a bet of $20. We've got bottom pair and some backdoor draws, so it's a pretty easy call for us. The third blind gets out of the way, and we go 3 ways to a turn, which is the 9 of diamonds. Action checks around, and at this point, I'm thinking that nobody's really expressed a whole lot of interest in this pot. Looks like there have been a decent draw. So we go off to a river, which is the ace of spades. Completes the front door flush draw. And at this point, I decide to take an aggressive action and go ahead and lead out for $45. I figure my bottom pair is probably not good, but the ace of spades seems like a pretty decent bluff card. And fortunately for us, we get both of our opponents to fold, and we take down a nice little pot here to start the session. Alright, well, we can't win them all, so this next hand is going to be a bit of a doozy, and probably one of the first mistakes I made on the night. Action starts off with a flat call, and we are sitting in +2, looking down at ace-jack offsuit, and we decide to raise it up to $25. Action moves around the table, and we get calls from the small blind, the big blind, and the +1. So we go 4 ways to a flop of 9, 7, 5 rainbow. This is probably where I make my first blunder. Action checks around to me, and I decide to continue betting, and I chose to bet small. I only ended up betting $30. In reality, this board does not hit my range very well at all, and my sizing is definitely no good. There's already a pretty decent amount of money in the pot, so all I end up doing is bloating the pot when all 4 of my opponents call me. Moving on to a turn, 5 of diamonds. It pairs the board, it brings in a flush draw, and at this point I do what I probably should have done on the flop and just let the action check through. The river brings the king of hearts. Now, action once again checks around. This is where I also probably made a mistake. That king is probably better for my pre-flop opening range than it is for any of my opponents. I could have taken an opportunity to possibly bet there, but unfortunately, I just decide to give up on the hand, and we ultimately end up losing this one to ace-7 offsuit. All right, folks, strap in, because this next one's going to be a doozy. For this next hand, the nit game is on. If you're not familiar with the nit game, every single player at the table gets a nit button. You win a hand and you lose your button. The last player at the table who has a button in front of them owes a penalty tax to everyone else at the table. In this case, it's a $10 penalty. So whoever loses the nit game is going to not only lose that last pot, but will also lose an extra $90. So action starts with Papa P in Under the Gun +1, and he looks down at pocket tens. He thinks about it for a moment and decides to raise to $20. Two other opponents call, and I peel back Ace Queen of Hearts. In most instances, I would probably just 3-bet small here, but because of the nit game and me wanting to get rid of my nit button, I decide to go ahead and open jam for $520. Folds back to Papa P. Papa P decides to call, and we go ahead and agree to run 2 boards. The first board comes King, Queen, Deuce, which is great for me. I flop middle pair, but it's just enough to beat his pocket tens, and I feel like I'm in pretty good shape. Turn card, though, is the Jack of Hearts, giving him an open-ended straight draw. Wait for the river, and the river comes the 4 of diamonds. So I win the first board, and we head off, and I know that I'm getting rid of my nit button. So we head off to the second board. Second board runs out Queen, Jack, 4. So immediately hit top pair on the second board to beat out those tens, but the turn, King of Spades, once again, giving my opponent an open-ended straight draw. So once again, we are sweating it out, trying to fade an ace or a 9, one-time dealer, and we get the Deuce of Hearts, completely bricking out his straight draws and giving me the scoop for a $1,000 pot in this 1-2-5 game. Alrighty, this next hand was another bit of a blunder. It limps to me in the +2 position, and I look down at Queen 7 of clubs. Normally pre-flop, you want to take an action of either betting or folding, and in this case, I decided to limp along, and it limped around to the cutoff, who decided to raise it to $25. Action calls back around, and I look down at a ballooned up pot and decide that my best option is to call. So we go 5 ways to a flop of 5-3-4 rainbow. Action checks to me, and I debate whether or not I should bet my gut shot with an overcard or if I should just check and see if I can get a free card. Ultimately, going multi-way, betting into 5 players is a really, really strong action, so I elected to check, and action checks around. Turn 10 of spades, and this time the under the gun player decides to lead out for $40. Action gets to me, and at this point it's just a really easy fold. I probably didn't need to be in this pot anyway, so all we ended up doing was torching $25 and not getting anywhere. So moving on to the next hand. Alright, this next one's kind of an interesting spot. There's an open from an early position to $15, and I look down at pocket eights. This seems like an opportunity for me to call or 3-bet. I decide to just call and see if I can bring a few more folks along for the ride, but the cutoff has different ideas, and he decides to just go ahead and open jam for $825. Action folds all the way back around to me, and I go ahead and I ask for a count. At this point, we've been playing for a little while, and I've noticed that this opponent has been on the really, really tight side. So the open jam preflop seems a little bit odd to me. The 7-deuce game is not on, and we don't have any nit buttons, so there's no extra incentive for the cutoff to just open jam like this, unless he has a hand that he's trying to protect. The hands that I think I could put him on are hands like suited ace-king, ace-queen, or ace-king offsuit, or possibly a middle to high pocket pair. After getting the full count, I debate for a little while in my head, trying to figure out which of his hands am I ahead of and which of his hands am I way behind. Ultimately, I decide to go ahead and just make the fold, as at best I'm probably just flipping for a good chunk of my stack, or I'm completely dominated, and decide to give this guy the $30 or so in the pot and move on to the next hand. For this next hand, we're going to see how dream scenarios can turn into nightmares super quick. In this situation, the nit game is on once again, and action folds around to me in the hijack, and I look down at 9-7 of diamonds. Perfect little suited gapper, and I decide to raise it up to $20. Action folds all the way around to the big blind, who calls. The +2 comes along as well, so we go 3 ways to a flop of ace, deuce, 4, all diamonds. That's right, we have flopped a flush. Action checks to me, and I decide to lead out for $100, thinking maybe I'll get one of my opponents to come along with an ace, maybe backdoors of some kind. But we get met with the absolute dream scenario when the big blind jams all in for $580. The +2 folds, and we snap call. We agree to run it twice, and he turns over 5-3 off suit for a flopped straight. So flopped straight versus a flopped flush. The first board finishes running out brick, brick. So I'm getting rid of my knit button, and I'm in really good shape. Now, this is where you think, okay, we're in pretty good shape, right? They get ready to run out the second board. All I got to do is fade one card out of 52, and I can scoop another massive pot. But the turn comes the 5 of diamonds, giving my opponent a straight flush. Oh my God, that is such a gut punch. And so in the end, we end up chopping this board up chopping the pot. I could have been up heaps and piles, and instead I end up just getting rid of my knit button and making 11 whole dollars when I flopped a flush against the straight. Sometimes the run good just isn't on your side, but we move on to the next hand. So after that, I go a little bit card dead and fold around for a while until we come to this hand. Action starts with Papa P under the gun 1, who opens the betting action to $20. Cupcake decides to come along, and then it folds to me in the big blind, and I look down at pocket kings. That's right, the Cowboys. I decide to go ahead and 3-bet to $80. Both Papa P and Cupcake decide to come along, so we go 3 ways to a flop of 7 Jack 3 Rainbow. I decide to lead out for $125 and get a call from Papa P and a fold out of Cupcake. So we go heads up to a turn of an 8 of hearts. Don't think anything too much of that card. The only thing that really gets there is 9-10, but I'm not too worried about that from Papa P, especially coming with an under the gun raise and then just a flat call of my 3-bet. So on this turn, I decide to go ahead and lead for $225, and I am met with an instant all-in jam from Papa P. Well, shit. At this point, the only thing I'm really losing to is 9-10 or a set of 7s, a set of 8s, maybe a set of jacks, and all of those hands are hands he totally could have. But I've got pocket kings. So I decide at this point, if he has it, he has it. GG's to him, but I go ahead and snap call. We decide to run it twice. First river, king of clubs. Perfect for me, gives me a set. We move on to the second river, which is the king of spades. So I go runner trips, and he ultimately mucks his cards, and I once again double up and am now officially up piles in this game. And with that, that was the last interesting hand of the stream. We did play a little bit off stream, and I ended up winning just a little bit more. But with that, let's go ahead and head to the outro.
Alright guys, that's going to wrap it up for this video. We did play a little bit more after the stream ended, and I did end up doubling up one more time. So final results are going to be shown somewhere up in this area. I was in the game for 500 and I was out of the game for 33 for a profit of $2,800. So think that's a pretty good way to start the stream off, and hopefully we'll be able to keep that streak running. So appreciate you for sticking around. Please, if you get a chance, if you like the video, click that like button, subscribe, share. I'm really trying to help grow this channel, and hopefully the next one's just going to keep the bankroll growing. So until then, peace.